Magnavox Odyssey came out in 1972, the world changed forever. It brought video games and one of the first in-home computers to the homes of families across the world. The most known game being Pong, or table tennis, but it wasn't the first video game. In fact, the first video games made for purely entertainment use came over 20 years earlier in the 1950s. Physicist William Higginbotham was the head of the Brookhaven National Laboratory Instrumentation Group from the years 1951 to 1968. And in that time, they would hold an event every October called the Annual Visitors Day, where the lab would show off all of the instrumentation group's works. Years later, Higginbotham would say in an interview that these exhibits were often rather dull, so all he wanted to do was create a way for the cathode ray tube with the CRT to be used in a more interactive way to get people more involved and care about what they were doing. Higginbotham created a game called Tennis for Two. And before that, there were other games made on computers like OXO, but that was an AI-run version of tic-tac-toe. It wasn't even made for entertainment purposes. It was entirely made for testing an AI algorithm. And I don't think Higginbotham expected it to take off the way that it did. You see, after the news hit the public that this laboratory had made an interactive video graphic game, thousands would wait in line just to play it. So what was it? Well, it was what he called computer tennis, later to be renamed Tennis for Two. But how is this different from Pong? And this is where things get interesting. The company Magnavox bought the first video game patent from a company called Sanders Associates and hired the creator of Pong, Ralph H. Baer. 5 years later, a patent lawyer from Atari, who had recreated Pong for the arcade systems, heard a rumor that the idea of Pong was not created by Magnavox or Baer at all, and started to track down Higginbotham. Luckily for Atari and for Higginbotham himself, he held on to the original schematics for the CRT Tennis for Two that was dated back by good old Uncle Sam himself. And between the years 1981 and 1983, lawsuits would drag on until Magnavox broke and decided to settle outside of court, but they never lost the rights to the patent itself. What I find fascinating here is that Higginbotham didn't get the recognition for inventing video games until 30 years after he invented video games, and even then he barely even cared. In his own words, "I consider my tennis game to have been one of my minor accomplishments." Baer, when he saw the Tennis for Two game on one of the 3 years of the annual visitors' days that Tennis for Two ran before the computer itself was dismantled for parts, he was so impassioned by it, and having been working for Sanders Associates, which was a television company at the time, he set to work creating what he called the Brown Box, which was the world's first home gaming console, later to be rebranded the Odyssey, after it was bought by Magnavox. This story was really interesting to research, and was fascinating to read. If you're interested to hear more, all of my sources are going to be listed below, or you can leave a comment asking a question. Otherwise, please leave me a like, subscribe for more content in the future. But I'm Waylon, and this is At the PCs.